My wife died on a work trip. 3 months later, I saw her buying coffee. I didn't know if this belonged here, but I didn't know where else to put it. My wife, Emily, died 3 months ago. Even typing that sentence still feels fake, like I am describing something that happened in a movie I watched half asleep. She was 32. I am 34. We'd been married 6 years, together for almost 9. She worked in corporate consulting, which meant a lot of travel, a lot of hotel rooms, a lot of ILL call you when I land texts. In March, she flew to Denver for a 3-day client workshop. On the second night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a man from the local police department. He said there had been an accident. He was calm in that practiced way people are when they were about to split your life in half. There was a rental car, a mountain road, bad weather, a fire. They identified her through dental records and personal belongings. Her wedding ring was recovered from the vehicle. Her company laptop was found badly damaged. Her phone was destroyed. I flew out the next morning with her brother, Mark. I remember sitting in the airport unable to cry because everything felt too official to be real. People kept handing me forms. Someone at the funeral home said, "Your wife," and I almost corrected them. Like, no, she asks, not a wife in paperwork. She asks Emily. She hates mushrooms. She falls asleep during documentaries. She leaves tiny notes in my coat pockets. The funeral was packed. Her coworkers flew in. Her parents were wrecked. My mom held my hand like I was 5 years old again. Her best friend, Claire, gave a speech about how Emily made every room warmer. Everyone nodded because it was true. Emily was sweet in a way that never felt fake. She remembered birthdays. She cried at commercials. She would apologize to furniture after bumping into it. I buried the woman I loved, or I thought I did. For 3 months, I did the things grieving people are supposed to do. I packed some of her clothes, then unpacked them because the closet looked cruel without them. I slept on my side of the bed because crossing over felt like trespassing. I went back to work. I smiled when people asked how I was holding up, because nobody wants the honest answer. Last Saturday, I went downtown for the first time since the funeral. My sister basically forced me. She said coffee and fresh air wouldn't fix anything, but sitting in the house with ghosts wasn't helping either. We were walking past a small cafe when I saw her. Not someone who looked like her from the back. Not a stranger with the same hair. Oh, Emily. She was standing near the counter in a green coat I had never seen before, laughing at something the barista said. Her hair was shorter, just above her shoulders, but it was her. Same little dimple on the left side. Same way she touched her necklace when she laughed. I froze so hard my sister bumped into me. I said, "That's Emily." My sister followed my stare and immediately grabbed my arm. "No, it is not." But her voice changed. She saw it too. The woman turned slightly, and for 1 second, I swear she looked directly at me. Her face went blank. Then she walked out the side door. I ran after her. By the time I got outside, she was gone. My sister spent the whole drive home telling me grief does horrible things to the brain. She said I saw what I wanted to see. Everyone I've told has said some version of that. But today, I found something. I was looking through an old box of Emily's travel receipts because I don't even know why. Maybe I wanted proof I am losing it. Folded inside a receipt from 2 years ago was a key. Attached to it was a plastic tag with an address written in Emily's handwriting. It's an apartment building 20 minutes away. I've never heard of it. And the key works. Update #1. The apartment wasn't supposed to exist. I didn't expect my first post to get so much attention. A lot of people told me not to go to the apartment alone. A lot of people told me to call the police. A few people told me I was experiencing a grief-induced breakdown. Honestly, I hoped it was the last one, because if I'm losing my mind, that's terrifying. But if I'm not, that's worse. Yesterday morning, I drove to the address on the key tag. The building was on the edge of downtown in a neighborhood Emily never had any reason to visit. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't fancy. Just one of those anonymous brick apartment buildings you pass 1,000 times without noticing. The key opened apartment 3B. I stood outside the door for nearly 5 minutes before using it. Part of me expected to find nothing. Part of me expected to find Emily sitting inside waiting for me. Instead, I found an empty apartment. Mostly, the place had clearly been lived in. There was furniture, a couch, a kitchen table, a bookshelf, but almost everything personal had been removed recently. The refrigerator was unplugged. The closets were empty. The bathroom cabinets were bare. It looked less like someone had moved out and more like someone had erased themselves. I spent almost 2 hours looking through everything. That's when I found the first thing that made my stomach drop. In a kitchen drawer was a receipt. The date was 14 months ago. Emily was supposedly attending a conference in Seattle that week. The receipt was from a grocery store 3 blocks from this apartment. I found more utility bills, mail, nothing addressed to Emily. Every document used the same name, Anna Pierce. The lease was under Anna Pierce. The electric bill was under Anna Pierce. The internet account was under Anna Pierce. At first I thought maybe Emily had rented the apartment for someone. Maybe a friend. Maybe a relative. Then I found photographs. Only 3 had been overlooked, all tucked behind a bookshelf. One showed Emily sitting on the couch. One showed Emily watering plants near the window. The last one showed Emily smiling directly at the camera. On the back someone had written, Anna, summer 2024. Not Emily. Ella. I drove home shaking. That night I barely slept. Today I hired a private investigator. I know that sounds extreme, but if my wife somehow survived a fatal car accident and disappeared, I need answers. The investigator, whose name is Greg, spent less than 10 minutes looking at the documents before asking a question I hadn't considered. What makes you sure she died? I reminded him about the accident, the police, the death certificate, the funeral, the dental records, all of it. Greg stared at me for a moment. Then he said something that has been rattling around in my head ever since. Every one of those things can be faked if somebody plans long enough. I laughed, not because it was funny, because it sounded impossible. But Greg didn't laugh. He just asked me how often Emily traveled for work. The answer is a lot. At least twice a month, sometimes more. He nodded slowly. Then he asked another question. Did you ever verify those trips? I told him no. Why would I? She'd send photos, call from airports, text from hotels. Everything seemed normal. Greg looked at the apartment photos again. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. What if the work trips were real? I frowned. What do you mean? He pointed at the photo of Emily. Maybe she wasn't disappearing during the trips. He paused. Maybe the trips were how she lived her other life. Last night I decided to call Emily's best friend, Claire. I haven't spoken to her much since the funeral. At first the conversation seemed normal. Then I casually mentioned the apartment. There was silence. Long silence. The kind people create when they're trying not to say the wrong thing. Finally she asked, what apartment? I told her the address. She immediately said she'd never heard of it. But before hanging up, she accidentally said something strange. Something she quickly tried to correct. She said, Emily told me she'd stopped going there. Stopped. Not started. Not visited. Stopped. As if she already knew exactly what place I was talking about. And now she won't answer my calls. Meanwhile, Greg just called me. He found something connected to Anna Pierce. And apparently, that's not her real name either. Update #2. Anna Pierce doesn't exist. And now I think someone is following me. I barely know where to start. The last 4 days have completely changed how I see my marriage. I used to think I was investigating a mistake. Now, I'm starting to think I never really knew my wife. After my last update, Greg the private investigator dug deeper into Anna Pierce. His conclusion was simple. Anna Pierce does not exist, at least not legally. The social security number attached to the apartment lease belonged to a dead woman who passed away decades ago. The driver's license associated with the lease was fake. The employment records were fake. The references used on the rental application were fake. Every trail ended in smoke. Somebody had constructed an entire identity. Carefully, patiently, professionally. And that realization led me to my first theory. Emily was in trouble. Maybe she was running from someone. Maybe she had witnessed something. Maybe she was being threatened. Honestly, that explanation comforted me. Because if she was forced into this, then she hadn't chosen to leave me. I desperately wanted that to be true. Then Greg ruined that theory. He found bank records, not criminal records, not blackmail payments, nothing dramatic, just years of transfers, small amounts, a few $100s at a time, sometimes 50, sometimes 200, always withdrawn in cash during work trips. Over 4 years, the total was nearly $80,000. My wife had been quietly building a secret life, dollar by dollar, year after year. Nobody forced that. Nobody kidnapped her into doing that. You don't accidentally create a second identity over 4 years. The worst part, our finances were shared. Every time she told me we should save money, every time she suggested postponing a vacation, every time she said we couldn't afford something, she was funding another life. I spent an entire evening staring at our wedding photos afterward, trying to figure out when it started, trying to identify the exact moment my marriage became a lie. I couldn't, because every memory still feels real. That's the problem. Emily wasn't cruel. She wasn't cold. She wasn't distant. She kissed me goodbye every morning. She called me during lunch. She remembered every anniversary. She held me when my father died. How does someone do all that while planning to disappear? Then something happened that made everything stranger. I received a letter, an actual paper letter. No return address, no name, just my address handwritten on the envelope. Inside was a single note. It read, "Stop looking for her." I thought, nothing else. No explanation, no signature. I showed it to Greg. He immediately asked whether anyone besides him knew about the investigation. The answer was very few people. My sister, Claire, and a handful of close friends. Then yesterday, I met someone. Or maybe she met me. I was leaving work when a woman approached me in the parking lot. Mid-40s, dark hair, professional clothes, confident. She knew my name. That immediately put me on edge. She introduced herself as Rachel. No last name, just Rachel. Then she said, "You need to stop trusting Claire." I asked who she was. She ignored the question. Instead, she asked, "Did Claire tell you about the journals?" I felt my stomach drop. "What journals?" Rachel looked genuinely surprised. Then she muttered something under her breath, almost like she'd made a mistake. I pressed her. She refused to explain. Instead, she handed me a storage unit number written on a business card. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Your wife spent years writing down what she couldn't say out loud." I asked what that meant. Rachel stared at me for several seconds. For a moment, she actually looked sad. Then she said, "Because if you read them, you'll stop looking for the woman you lost." I demanded answers. Who was she? How did she know Emily? Why was she helping me? She wouldn't say. Before leaving, she gave one final warning. "Some people want those journals destroyed." Then she walked away. I've tried calling the number on the card. It's disconnected. I've searched her name. Nothing. No Rachel connected to Emily. No Rachel connected to the apartment. Nothing. Meanwhile, Claire is still refusing my calls. Greg thinks Rachel might be trying to help. I think she might be manipulating me. I don't know who to trust anymore, but tomorrow morning, Greg and I are opening that storage unit. And if journals really exist, I may finally learn who my wife actually was. Or discover that I never knew her at all. Update #3. I found the journals. I wish I hadn't. I've spent the last 24 hours reading words that were never meant for me. And I don't think I'll ever be the same. Yesterday morning, Greg and I went to the storage facility. The unit was rented under yet another name. Not Emily, not Anna Pierce. A third identity. At this point, I wasn't even surprised. The manager confirmed the rent had been paid automatically for years. Yes, that word keeps hitting me like a truck. Every new discovery pushes the timeline further back. Whatever this was, it didn't start recently. It wasn't some sudden crisis. It wasn't a breakdown. It wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a plan, a very long one. The storage unit itself was small, mostly boxes, a few pieces of furniture, some clothes, nothing dramatic. Then we found a plastic container labeled journals. I almost left. I actually mean that. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't open it, because some part of me still believed there would be an explanation, something that would make all of this make sense, something that would bring my wife back. Instead, I spent 8 hours destroying my own memories. The journals covered nearly 6 years, hundreds of entries. At first they seemed normal: work stress, travel, family issues, random observations. Then things started changing. The first entry that truly hurt was from 5 years ago. It said, "Everyone thinks I'm happy." That was it. Just one sentence. Simple, short, devastating. A few weeks later, she wrote, "I love him. That's the problem." I read that line 20 times. I still don't know exactly what it means. The entries became darker over time. Not angry, not hateful. That's what makes them difficult. I expected resentment. Instead, I found exhaustion. Emily constantly described feeling trapped. Not by me specifically, by everything. Responsibilities, expectations, married, work, family obligations. The version of herself everyone expected her to be. One entry said, "Every day feels pre-written. I know exactly what next year looks like, and the year after that, and the year after that." Another said, "Nothing is wrong. That's why nobody understands." I actually had to stop reading after that one. Because she's right. Nothing was wrong. We weren't fighting. There wasn't abuse. There wasn't cheating. At least not then. Our friends envied our relationship. Her family adored me. My family adored her. By all appearances, we were happy. Apparently, appearances meant nothing. Then I found something that shifted my entire understanding again. An entry from almost 4 years ago. It mentioned a man. Just once. No name. No details. Only this. He asked me what I'd do if nobody knew who I was. I haven't stopped thinking about it. I immediately assumed affair. Greg assumed affair. Reddit will probably assume affair. But I kept reading, and every time I thought I understood the story, the journals contradicted me. There were no romantic entries, no secret relationship, no declarations of love, nothing. The mystery man appeared only a handful of times, always connected to one idea: freedom, identity, starting over. Then I found a list, actual bullet points, a checklist, dated nearly 3 years ago. I wish I were joking. The list included: save emergency funds, secure second apartment, create backup identity, burner phones, alternate mailing address, replace records, learn new signature. Every item was checked off. Every single one. 3 years ago. 3 years. I sat there staring at the page for nearly 10 minutes. My wife wasn't planning an escape. She was building one. Then things got worse. Much worse. Because near the bottom of the same notebook, tucked between pages, was a photograph. A recent photograph. Far more recent than the others. Emily was standing beside another man. They weren't kissing. They weren't touching. But they looked comfortable. Very comfortable. Like people who knew each other well. Written on the back: soon. No date. No explanation. Just one word. Ugh. Last night I barely slept. This morning I woke up to 3 missed calls from Claire. She finally wants to talk. And according to the voicemail she left, she says the man in the photograph is not who I think he is. She says she's been lying to me since the funeral. And she says if I keep investigating, I'm going to discover something Emily never wanted anyone to know. Update #4. Claire finally told me the truth. Except it wasn't the truth. I met Claire yesterday. For months after Emily's funeral, she was one of the people who checked on me constantly. Then the moment I mentioned the apartment, she disappeared, ignored calls, ignored texts, acted like she wanted nothing to do with any of this. Now I know why, or at least I thought I did. We met at a diner halfway between our houses. She looked terrible, not physically, emotionally, like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. The moment she sat down, she started crying. Not dramatic crying, the quiet kind. The kind people do when they've been carrying something too heavy for too long. I didn't know whether to comfort her or demand answers. Eventually, I chose answers. I put the photograph of Emily and the unknown man on the table. Claire stared at it for several seconds. Then she closed her eyes and said, "I knew you'd find that eventually." I asked who he was. Her answer hit me like a punch. "His name is Daniel." She paused, then added, "He was engaged to Emily." For a second I genuinely thought I'd misheard her. Engaged, not dating, not seeing each other. Engaged? I just stared at her. She quickly started explaining. According to Claire, Emily met Daniel nearly 2 years ago. Not through work, not online, not through some secret social circle. They met while Emily was living part-time as Anna. That second life I'd been uncovering. That hidden apartment. That fake identity. Daniel knew her as Anna. Only Anna. Nothing else. Apparently she told him her parents were dead. She told him she had no siblings. She told him she had never been married. She built an entirely different life. An entirely different history. Claire claimed Daniel proposed last year. Emily accepted. I honestly thought I was going to throw up. The waitress actually came over because I looked pale. Meanwhile, Claire kept talking. Apparently, Emily never intended Daniel to discover the truth. Or me. Or anyone. The plan was for both lives to remain separate until she vanished permanently. I asked the obvious question. What? Claire looked away. And for the first time, she gave an answer. Because she wanted to become Anna. Not escape abuse. Not escape debt. Not escape danger. Not run away with another man. She wanted to become someone else. Completely. I hated that answer. It felt too simple. Too ridiculous. Nobody destroys 2 families because they're bored. Nobody fakes their own death because they want a fresh start. There had to be more. So I pushed harder. That's when Claire told me something else. Something she had hidden for years. Emily had been seeing a therapist for nearly 4 years. Secretly. Not because she was depressed. Not because she was suicidal. Because she was obsessed with the idea that her life didn't belong to her. Claire described it as an identity crisis that never ended. The more she explained, the less sense it made. Then she said something strange. Something that completely changed the conversation. She said, "Daniel thinks she's dead too." I froze. What? Claire nodded. Then she explained. According to her, Daniel received a completely different story. Several months after Emily's supposed death, someone contacted him. Not Emily, a lawyer. The lawyer claimed Anna Pierce had died overseas. Different death, different location, different documents, different identity. Same woman. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. My supposedly dead wife had apparently died twice. As 2 different people, for 2 different audiences. I demanded Daniel's contact information. Claire refused. At first. Then I showed her the journals. That changed everything. Her face drained of color when she saw them. especially one specific notebook. She immediately asked where I'd gotten it. Not all the journals, just that one. The reaction was so specific it scared me. I asked why. She wouldn't answer. Instead, she whispered that one was supposed to disappear. Before leaving, she finally gave me Daniel's phone number. I called him this morning. We talked for nearly 2 hours. And here's the worst part. Everything Claire said was true. Daniel was engaged to my wife. He loved her. He believed she was dead. And after comparing photographs, we realized something neither of us expected. Emily had been lying to both of us, but not in the same way. Because the woman I marry and the woman Daniel loved don't seem to be the same person at all. And tonight Daniel is driving here. He's bringing something he found after Anna's death. Something he says proves Emily planned all of this years before either of us met her. Update #5. Daniel brought a box. I think it changes everything. I spent yesterday with the man my wife almost married. That sentence alone still feels impossible. If someone had told me 6 months ago that I'd be sitting across from another grieving fiancé comparing stories about the same woman, I would have thought they were insane. But that's exactly what happened. Daniel arrived around noon. He's 36. Quiet, polite, looks exhausted in the same way I probably do. The moment he walked into my house, we both froze. Not because of each other, because of the framed photographs. He stared at the wedding picture on my mantle. I stared at the engagement photo he carried in his phone. Same smile, same eyes, same woman. 2 completely different lives. For several minutes, neither of us knew what to say. Then Daniel opened the box. Inside were dozens of documents, photos, receipts, letters, old notebooks, burner phones, everything Anna had left behind, or supposedly left behind. The first thing we noticed was how different Emily's personalities appeared in our memories. To me, she was warm, dependable, careful, the person who planned holidays 6 months in advance, the person who worried about everyone, the person who never took risks. To Danielle, she was spontaneous, adventurous, impulsive. She once disappeared for 3 days because she wanted to drive across the state and watch a meteor shower. She changed jobs twice, changed hobbies constantly, talked about moving overseas. According to Daniel, she hated routines. I almost argued with him. Then I realized he wasn't wrong. He was describing the same woman, just a different version. The realization made me feel sick, because it meant neither of us had known the complete person. Then we found the letters. At first I assumed they were love letters. That weren't. Most were addressed to herself. Actual handwritten notes. Pages and pages. The same theme appeared repeatedly. I don't know which life is real anymore. Every version of me feels fake. Maybe Anna is pretending to be Emily. Maybe Emily is pretending to be Anna. Those entries disturbed me more than the deception itself. Because for the first time, I started wondering whether Emily genuinely believed what she was writing. Then Daniel showed me something he'd never told anyone. A video. Apparently, Anna recorded dozens of private video diaries. Most were harmless. Reflections, thoughts, random conversations with the camera. Then we found one recorded 8 months before her death. Or disappearance. Whatever we're calling it now. In the video, Emily looked terrified. Not sad, not angry, terrified. She kept checking over her shoulder. At first I thought we'd finally found proof that someone was threatening her. Finally, a real explanation. A villain. A villain. Then she started talking, and destroyed that theory too. She said, "Nobody is making me do this." Then, I need to remember that. Nobody is forcing me. She repeated it multiple times, as if she was trying to convince herself. Then she said something that neither Daniel nor I have been able to stop thinking about. One day everyone will hate me. After that she began crying. Real crying. The kind that comes from somewhere deep. Then she said, "But if I stay, I'll disappear anyway." The recording ended there. Daniel and I sat in silence afterward, because once again, the obvious explanation didn't fit. She wasn't escaping danger. She wasn't escaping crime. She wasn't being manipulated, at least not from what we could see. She was choosing this, and somehow suffering because of it. Last night we went through the burner phones. Most were wiped. One wasn't. Inside were hundreds of messages, many deleted, some recoverable. One contact appeared constantly. The same person, Rachel, the mysterious woman who gave me the storage unit number, the woman who seems to know everything, the woman who keeps appearing at exactly the right moment. Until now, I assumed Rachel was helping Emily, maybe protecting her, maybe hiding her, maybe controlling the situation. Then we recovered a message from Emily sent 2 years ago. It read, "If I disappear, don't let them think you're involved." Rachel responded, "Then don't do this." Emily replied, "I already decided." That message changed everything. Because for the first time, it looked like Rachel wasn't helping Emily disappear. It looked like she was trying to stop her. And this morning, Rachel called me herself. She said she is ready to tell me everything, but only if I come alone. And she says once I hear the truth I'll understand why Emily never expected me to find her. Update #6. Rachel told me the truth, or at least part of it. I almost didn't go. Every instinct told me it was a bad idea. A mysterious woman appears out of nowhere, knows intimate details about my dead wife, leaves cryptic warnings, then asks to meet alone? That's the beginning of every horror story ever written. Greg told me not to go. Daniel told me not to go. Even my sister said it sounded dangerous. But at this point, every answer I have came from people I wasn't supposed to trust. So I went. The meeting was at a small public park. Middle of the day. Families everywhere. Kids playing. About as safe as possible. Rachel was already there. Waiting. She looked tired. Not nervous. Not guilty. Just tired. Like she'd been carrying someone else's secret for too long. For a few minutes neither of us spoke. Then I asked the question that's been haunting me for months. Who are you? She gave a sad smile. I'm the person who tried to stop your wife. Not exactly the answer I was expecting. Then she explained. Rachel wasn't Emily's accomplice. She wasn't helping hide her. She wasn't protecting her. Rachel was her therapist. Or rather, her former therapist. The same therapist Claire had mentioned. The one Emily had been seeing in secret for years. I immediately asked whether she was violating confidentiality. Rachel nodded. Absolutely. That surprised me. Most people would defend themselves. She didn't. She just admitted it. Then she said, sometimes doing the right thing and following the rules aren't the same thing. According to Rachel, Emily first came to therapy almost 5 years earlier. At first, the sessions were normal. Work stress, anxiety, life dissatisfaction. Nothing unusual. But over time, a pattern emerged. Emily wasn't unhappy with specific people. She wasn't unhappy with her marriage. She wasn't unhappy with her career. She was unhappy with being herself. Rachel described as something she'd rarely seen. Most people want parts of their lives to change. Emily wanted ownership of her life. The distinction matters. Because every time Rachel helped her solve a problem, Emily created another one. Every improvement made her feel worse. Every success made her feel trapped. Eventually, Emily became obsessed with a single question. If nobody knew me, who would I become? The apartment, the fake identity, the second life. All of it started as an experiment. At least according to Rachel, Emily rented the apartment intending to spend a few weekends there. Nothing more, just temporary freedom, a chance to exist without expectations. But the experiment worked too well. The more time she spent as Anna, the more attached she became to Anna. Rachel begged her to stop. Emily refused. Then Daniel entered the picture. Rachel looked genuinely angry when she mentioned him, because according to her, that was the moment everything crossed a line. A second apartment was one thing, a second relationship was another, a second engagement, something else entirely. Rachel told her repeatedly that she was creating victims. Emily knew. Emily agreed. Emily kept going. That part was difficult to hear, because up until now I'd still been clinging to the idea that there was some hidden explanation, some revelation that would make me forgive her. Rachel didn't offer one. Instead, she handed me something, a sealed envelope. Apparently, Emily left instructions years ago. If she ever vanished and somehow got discovered, Rachel was supposed to destroy it. She didn't. Instead, she kept it. All this time, the envelope contained a single handwritten letter, addressed to me, my name on the front. My handwriting loving wife had written it almost 2 years before her disappearance. I asked Rachel why she hadn't given it to me sooner. Her answer chilled me, because she said she wasn't planning to disappear when she wrote it. I opened the letter after getting home. I wish I hadn't. The first line alone broke me. It said, if you're reading this, then I failed. I haven't been able to stop thinking about that sentence. They'll not die, not got caught. They'll, as if my wife viewed her own disappearance as a project. Emiden, something with success criteria. I've read the letter 3 times. I still can't process all of it, but one paragraph stands out. One paragraph that changes everything. According to Emily, there was never supposed to be a body, never supposed to be a funeral, never supposed to be a death certificate. That wasn't part of her plan, which means one of 2 things is true. Either she's lying, or someone else helped fake her death, and whoever that person is, they've been hiding in the background the entire time. Update #7. We finally discovered who helped fake her death. I wish we hadn't. I've written this update 3 times. Every version sounds unbelievable, but at this point, unbelievable has become normal. After reading Emily's letter, Daniel, Greg, and I focused on one question. If Emily didn't plan the fake death, Then who did? Because the accident wasn't imaginary. There really was a crash. There really was a burned vehicle. There really was a death certificate. There really was a funeral. Hundreds of people attended it. Somebody had created an official death and somehow attached Emily's name to it. For a week we chased every theory we could think of. Criminal connections, identity fraud, corrupt officials, insurance scams. Nothing fit. Every trail collapsed. Then Greg found something buried in old records. One name, a lawyer who appeared repeatedly around both identities, Emily, Ella, and even a third alias we hadn't fully investigated yet. The same lawyer had helped establish shell addresses, rental agreements, document filings, everything. The name was Martin Voss. At first we assumed he was some kind of fixer, maybe someone she paid, maybe someone she manipulated. Then Greg located him, and everything changed. Because Martin wasn't hiding, he wasn't dead, he wasn't on the run. He was practicing law less than 2 hours away. We met him 3 days ago. I expected resistance. Instead, he looked relieved. Actually relieved. As if he'd been waiting for this conversation. The moment he saw Emily's photograph, he sighed. Then he said, I wondered how long it would take. I wanted to punch him. Instead, I asked whether he helped fake my wife's death. His answer, yes, just like that. No denial, no hesitation. Yes, the room went silent. Then he explained. Apparently Emily approached him nearly 3 years earlier. She wanted help disappearing legally, not dying, disappearing. Martin claimed he refused repeatedly. For months, then years, Emily kept returning, always with new plans, new identities, new preparations. Eventually she asked him a question he says he still regrets answering. What's the cleanest way to leave a life behind? According to Martin, he never intended to help her fake a death. His role was supposed to be limited to identity changes and relocation. Then the accident happened. A real accident. A woman died in a vehicle fire. The victim's body was severely damaged. Identification became complicated. Martin says Emily saw an opportunity, one she never planned for, one she immediately exploited. Within days she vanished. Documents were altered. Mistakes were encouraged. Confusion became certainty, and somehow Emily became officially dead. When he realized what she'd done, it was already too late. At least that's his version. I still don't know whether I believe him. Then Martin said something that none of us expected, something that completely changed the investigation. Emily wasn't living alone. Not now. Not for the last year. The room instantly tensed. Daniel assumed boyfriend. I assumed boyfriend. Greg assumed boyfriend. We were all wrong. Martin shook his head, then said, she's living with a woman. Rachel. That was my first thought. Apparently not. A completely different woman. Someone we'd never heard of. Someone Emily met after disappearing. Someone named Sophie. At first I thought maybe this explained everything. Maybe Emily had fallen in love. Maybe this was all about a secret relationship. Finally, a simple answer. Then Martin destroyed that theory too, because according to him, Sophie didn't even know Emily's real identity. Not at first, not for months. Apparently Emily introduced herself under yet another name, another life, another version of herself. I honestly don't know how many people my wife has become anymore. Then Martin handed me a photograph, a recent one, less than 6 months old. Emily was standing outside a grocery store, smiling, healthy, alive. The first confirmed proof we'd seen. Not a blurry sighting, not an old image, not a possibility. Alive. The photo broke me, not because she looked different, because she looked happy, genuinely happy, happier than I'd seen her in years. I stared at it for almost an hour after getting home. Then I cried harder than I did at her funeral, because for the first time, I fully understood something. My wife didn't leave because she had to. She left because she wanted to. And somehow that's more painful than death. But that's not the worst part. Last night Sophie contacted Daniel. Apparently Emily finally told her the truth. And now Sophie wants to meet us. Because she says Emily lied to her too. And she's bringing evidence that proves Emily started planning her disappearance long before she ever met me. Update #8. We found her. I don't think I was prepared for what she would say. I spent months imagining this moment. Every version played differently. In some, Emily cried and apologized. In others, she explained everything. Sometimes she was trapped. Sometimes she was sick. Sometimes she had a reason so heartbreaking that I'd immediately forgive her. Reality was worse, much worse. 3 days ago, Daniel and I met Sophie. She was 29, friendly, intelligent, completely devastated. The moment she sat down, I recognized the expression. It was the same look Daniel and I saw in the mirror every morning. Betrayal. Because Sophie had loved her too. not Emily, not Anna, not whatever name came before or after. The person standing in front of her every day, the person she believed was real, and now she wasn't sure any of it had been. Sophie brought documents, photos, messages, and one notebook. Not Emily's journals, a planning notebook. The notebook, the one that finally answered the question that had haunted me since the beginning. When did this start? The answer destroyed me. Before we got married, before we were engaged, before I proposed, there were entries dating back nearly 10 years. Them, yes, INDS, Wests, possible identities, cities, budgets, future plans. The earliest versions were almost fantasy, like someone daydreaming. But over time the notes became serious, structured, detailed, practical. There was even a page titled, Things I'll Miss. My name was on it. So was her mother, her brother, Claire, friends, places, memories, everything. She had literally written down the cost of leaving and continued planning anyway. That realization broke something inside me, because it meant our entire marriage existed while this possibility lived inside her. Not necessarily as certainty, but as an option, an exit door, always waiting. Then Sophie told us where Emily was. Not an approximate location, not a city, an address. Apparently, after learning the truth, Sophie confronted her. The relationship exploded. Emily moved out, and Sophie decided she'd spent enough time protecting someone who lied to everyone. The next morning, Daniel and I drove there. I don't remember most of the trip, only the feeling that my entire life was approaching a collision point. After months of chasing ghosts, we were finally going to meet one. The house was small, white siding, blue shutters. Ordinary, painfully ordinary. I kept thinking about how ridiculous it was. Months of investigation, fake identities, fake deaths, secret apartments, burner phones, and it ended at a completely normal house. We knocked, nobody answered. Daniel knocked again. Then the door opened, and there she was, Emily, alive, breathing. For several seconds nobody moved, nobody spoke. The woman I'd buried stood 3 feet away. She looked older, tired, scared, but unmistakably her. I expected anger. I expected relief. I expected something dramatic. Instead, she whispered, "Oh my God." Then she started crying. Not us. She started crying. The first words out of her mouth weren't "I'm sorry." They weren't "I love you." They weren't "Please let me explain." They were, "I never thought you'd find me." That sentence hit harder than anything else, because it was honest. Completely honest. She truly believed she'd gotten away with it. Then something happened that shocked me. Emily looked at Daniel, then at me, and somehow she became the victim. I don't know how else to describe it. Within minutes, she was talking about how hard this had been for her, how trapped she'd felt, how impossible her life had become, how nobody understood, how everyone expected things from her. At one point, she actually said, "You don't know what it was like carrying all of this." I just stared at her, because I was looking at the woman whose funeral I attended, the woman who let her mother mourn, the woman who let me spend months believing she was dead, and somehow she was talking about her suffering. Then she said something that made the entire room go silent, something I still can't process. She looked directly at me and said, "I never stopped loving you. Tomorrow we're meeting again." She says she is ready to tell us everything, the whole truth, and based on what she hinted today, I think the story is somehow even worse than we imagined. Final update: 1 year later, she wasn't dead. Our marriage was. It's been exactly 1 year since my last update. A lot of people asked what happened after we found Emily. For a long time, I couldn't answer. Not because I didn't know what to say, because I didn't know how to describe losing the same person twice. The day after we found her, Daniel and I met Emily one final time. No lawyers, no investigators, no secrets, just the three of us. The husband, the fiancé, and a woman who had built entire lives around both of us. I expected some massive revelation, a hidden illness, a cult, a criminal conspiracy, something, anything, a reason that could justify the destruction she'd left behind. There wasn't one. That was the truth. There was no secret, no villain, no dramatic twist, only Emily. She talked for almost 4 hours. What she described matched the journals almost perfectly. For years she felt disconnected from her own life. Not unhappy exactly, disconnected, like she was performing a role she'd accidentally accepted and didn't know how to leave. Every milestone made the feeling worse. Marriage, career advancement, buying a home, future plans. She kept waiting for certainty, for peace, for the feeling that she belonged in her own life. It never arrived. The apartment started as an escape, then became a habit, then became an addiction, then became a second life, then a third. and eventually she crossed a point where returning felt impossible. I asked the question that had haunted me from the beginning. Why fake your death? Her answer still makes me angry. Because she genuinely believed it was kinder. She believed disappearing forever would allow everyone to move on. No messy divorce. No public betrayal. No explanation. Just grief. As if grief was somehow the merciful option. I told her she'd stolen years from people's lives. She cried. Daniel told her she'd manipulated everyone who loved her. She cried. We described the funeral, her mother's breakdown, the sleepless nights, the panic attacks, the guilt, the devastation. She cried through all of it, but even then part of her still saw herself as a victim. Not the victim. A victim. A person trapped by choices she didn't know how to escape. That's what made the conversation so heartbreaking. Emily wasn't evil. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't trying to hurt us. She simply decided that her need to leave outweighed everyone else's right to the truth. And that's a very difficult thing to forgive. In the end, she admitted something brutally honest. She said, if I had told the truth, none of you would have let me go. Maybe she was right. Maybe we would have fought for her. Maybe we would have convinced her to stay. Maybe we would have failed. We'll never know. Because she never gave anyone that chance. That was the second grief. The first grief happened at the funeral. The second happened sitting across from her, realizing she had chosen to leave. Not because she stopped loving us. Not because she hated us. Because she wanted another life more than she wanted the one she had. That realization hurt more than her death ever did. After that meeting, we never spoke again. Daniel never spoke to her again either. Neither did Sophie. Claire cut contact. Rachel returned to her practice and disappeared from our lives. The investigators stopped investigating. The mystery was solved. There was nothing left to find, only consequences. Over the next year, Emily became a strange kind of ghost. Not dead, not present, just gone. Legally, the fraud surrounding her death eventually unraveled. There were investigations, lawsuits, settlements. I won't go into details. What matters is this: she's alive, and she's living under her real name now. For the first time in years. As far as I know, she's alone. Maybe by choice, maybe not. As for me, I sold the house, started therapy, stopped reading the journals, eventually stopped looking at old photographs. The healing wasn't dramatic. It was boring. Painfully slow. But it happened. Last month, I got engaged. Not because Emily is forgotten. Not because what happened stopped hurting. Because grief finally stopped being my entire identity. My fiancé knows everything. Every horrible detail. And one night she asked me a question. She asked, do you think Emily found what she was looking for? I thought about it for a long time. Then I answered honestly, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I do know something else. For years, I thought the tragedy was that my wife died. Then I learned she hadn't. The real tragedy was that she spent years believing she needed to become someone else to be happy. And in the process she lost everyone who ever loved her, including me. This is the end of the story. Don't forget to share with your friends, comment, like, and subscribe.